Welcome to Furniture Industry News. Today is Friday, June 5th, 2026, and we're glad you're with us. This is a big one. The trade environment just got a lot more complicated, and home furnishings is sitting right in the middle of it. In a single week, we got a new customs crackdown, a sweeping tariff proposal touching 60 countries, and billions of dollars in refund claims now stuck in legal limbo. On top of that, we've got fresh earnings, a cleared mega deal, and a surprise upholstery acquisition. The bottom line is simple. Sourcing, pricing, and margin discipline are about to be tested all over again. Let's get into it. We're going to start in Washington, because that's where most of the pressure is coming from this week. On June 3rd, the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative proposed a brand new wave of tariffs aimed at 60 economies. This came out of a Section 301 investigation into how different countries police forced labor in their supply chains. And for an industry built on sourcing from many countries at once, the proposed rates land very close to home. Here's how it breaks down. The trade representative recommended a 10% tariff on 6 countries it says have failed to enforce forced labor laws. Those are Canada, Ecuador, the European Union, Indonesia, Mexico, and Pakistan. Then there's a separate 10% tariff for countries that have trade agreements with the United States, and that list includes the United Kingdom, Cambodia, Malaysia, Guatemala, El Salvador, Argentina, Bangladesh, and Taiwan. And finally, a 12.5% tariff would cover all the other countries under investigation. That group includes some of the biggest names in furniture sourcing: China, Japan, Vietnam, and South Korea. Now, a couple of important things to keep in mind. That 12.5% rate is actually lower than some previous rates, but it's slightly higher than the temporary 10% global rate that's currently in place, which is set to expire on July 24th. And none of this is final yet. The trade representative has scheduled a public hearing for July 7th and will take comments through early July. So why does this matter to you? Because furniture, bedding, decor, and accessory supply chains lean heavily on the exact countries that are named here. If these rates get finalized, landed costs go up across multiple categories all at once, and that squeezes the margin math that retailers have spent the last year carefully rebuilding. But here's the opportunity. That July comment window is real. Companies that can show concrete, specific examples of how this affects their business have a genuine shot at shaping the final outcome. So treat the next month as a planning window, not a waiting window. And the tariff proposal wasn't the only trade news this week. On that same day, June 3rd, the president signed an executive order directing federal agencies to tighten import compliance across the board. According to the Home Furnishings Association, this order raises the bar on documentation, on supplier scrutiny, and on penalties. The order tells agencies to tighten importer of record requirements, to increase supply chain disclosure, and to crack down harder on things like undervaluation, misclassification, forced labor, and illegal transshipment. It also brings tougher penalties for anyone who doesn't comply. The association points out that this could weigh most heavily on retailers who use complex importer structures, overseas entities, or vendor-led import arrangements. And here's the practical read. This is operational, not just political. Expect more paperwork, closer scrutiny at customs, and a higher risk of shipment delays, all of which cost real money. If you're leaning on vendor-led import arrangements, now is the time to pressure test those relationships before enforcement tightens up. There is a silver lining, though. The association notes that tougher enforcement can actually level the playing field for the businesses that have been following the rules all along, against competitors who have been cutting corners. There's one more piece to the trade story, and it's about money that may or may not be coming back to importers. The administration has appealed a broad refund ruling tied to earlier tariff claims. The Department of Justice is now arguing that the Court of International Trade doesn't have the authority to order refunds for importers who didn't directly join the original lawsuits. As of the association's reporting, Customs and Border Protection has already accepted roughly $85 billion in refund claims and has directed more than $20 billion in actual payments. This whole question could end up back at the Supreme Court. For furniture retailers, that's just one more layer of unpredictability at a time when financial planning is already hard enough. Let's shift gears now to earnings, because Macy's gave us a really useful read on the consumer. Macy's raised its full-year outlook after a stronger-than-expected first quarter. The Macy's store division posted its fourth straight quarter of comparable sales gains, and Bloomingdale's actually had record first-quarter sales. Total company net sales rose about 1.8% to $4.7 billion, with comparable sales up 3%. That's the first net sales growth the company has seen since 2022. Bloomingdale's brought in $929 million, with a comp up more than 10%. Net income jumped almost 66% to $63 million, and the company raised its full-year guidance on the strength of all that. But here's the part that matters most for us. The soft spot was big-ticket home, which includes furniture. The chairman and CEO, Tony Spring, said that tariffs drove up pricing on big-ticket home, and in his words, the consumer pushed back. Higher interest rates and mortgage rates added even more drag. Spring also noted that the assortment is now skewing toward what he called the best bucket over the better and good buckets. In plain terms, premium is holding up, while the middle is softening. So what's the lesson? Macy's is telling the whole industry something a lot of you already feel on the showroom floor. When tariffs push furniture prices up, value-sensitive shoppers walk. The read here is to protect your entry-level and mid-price tiers, because that's exactly where the rate-sensitive buyers live, and right now, that's where demand is thinnest. Now, let's talk deals, because there were two big ones this week. The first is large. Somni Group's $2.5 billion acquisition of Leggett & Platt just cleared U.S. antitrust review. The required federal waiting period expired on June 3rd without any challenge from regulators. Now, to be clear, the deal still has a shareholder vote and several international approvals ahead of it, in Canada, the European Union, the United Kingdom, South Korea, and Austria. But the U.S. green light is a meaningful step. Somni Group, by the way, is the Dallas-based parent of Mattress Firm and Tempur Sealy, and under this deal, Leggett & Platt would become a wholly owned subsidiary, folding in its inner springs, foam, adjustable bases, and hardware operations. The companies expect to close by the end of 2026. Why should you care? Because this pulls a major bedding component supplier under the same roof as the country's largest mattress retailer and manufacturer. If you source inner springs, foam, or adjustable bases, the supply chain behind your bedding category is consolidating. It's worth watching how this affects component availability, pricing, and lead times heading into 2027. And it's worth knowing your alternatives now, before you need them. The second deal is a bit of a surprise. The upholstery maker Palliser has been acquired by its longtime supplier, Motion. The deal closed on May 29th, and it formalizes a partnership that goes back more than a decade. Palliser's leaders confirmed it in an internal memo, though they didn't disclose a purchase price. Motion is a publicly listed company with more than 7,000 employees and manufacturing across Vietnam, China, and Cambodia. It's part of a China-based parent company and has a U.S. presence in Arcadia, California. Importantly, Palliser's head office in Winnipeg will stay a center for product development, design, sales, and customer service, with no immediate changes to roles. And one clarification worth noting, Palliser's Canadian manufacturing operations are not part of this deal, because those are owned and operated by a separate company that will keep running on its own. Here's the angle to watch. A respected North American upholstery brand is now backed by a vertically integrated Asian manufacturer, with production in Vietnam, China, and Cambodia. And that's happening at the exact moment all three of those countries are under tariff scrutiny. The deal promises faster product development and quicker speed to market, which is a real upside. But it also ties Palliser's supply chain to countries facing new trade pressure. So dealers should keep an eye on how sourcing, pricing, and lead times evolve under the new ownership. Before we wrap, let me hit a few quick items worth knowing. On the demand side, new orders for residential furniture totaled $2.11 billion in March, down 2% from a year earlier, according to Smith Leonard's latest Furniture Insights report. Shipments were a brighter spot, up 2% from a year ago and up 6% from February. But factory and warehouse employment was down 5% from a year earlier, even as payroll expense rose, which suggests manufacturers may be paying up to hold on to the workers they have. There's also another Vietnam development. Separate from the big tariff proposal, the trade representative launched a new Section 301 investigation specifically into Vietnam's intellectual property practices, announced on May 29th. Comments are due July 2nd, with a determination required by late November. Given how important Vietnam has become to furniture sourcing, that's one to track. On the consumer, the chief operating officer of the small business lender Capitas, Ben Johnston, described what he called a K-shaped economy, where wealthier shoppers drive spending growth while everyone else struggles. His advice for value-focused furniture retailers is to lower costs without gutting service, to lean on buy now, pay later financing, and to keep multiple financing relationships open to manage cash flow. And finally, a calendar shift worth planning around. With Amazon moving Prime Day to late June and Target matching that timing, the retail columnist Dan Berthiaume argues that July is now a rare quiet window. His suggestions are to court late summer shoppers who don't follow the retail calendar, to launch your own holiday in July promotion and get a jump on the season, and to use the slower traffic as a low-risk time to test new fulfillment, loyalty, and promotional ideas. That's the briefing for today. If you found this useful, we'd love for you to subscribe and keep listening so you don't miss what's next. Thanks for spending part of your day with Furniture Industry News.